Yeah, 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 yeah. Yeah, 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 yeah.
Welcome to the deep dive. We're moving way beyond just faster computers or, smarter apps now. It's really about whether our own brains are becoming the next database. Today, we're diving into what might be the most urgent tech question right now. This collision point between AI becoming truly pervasive neurotechnology and this, frantic global push to keep hold of digital and maybe more critically, mental sovereignty.
It really is the critical question. Because AI isn't just a tool anymore, not in the way we used to think about it. We're stepping into an age of genuinely autonomous agents and these brain-computer interfaces. The stakes, they couldn't be higher. It all comes down to who owns the data, starting with the most private data imaginable, the thoughts inside our heads.
Okay, right. Let's try and unpack this a bit. Our sources are painting this picture of a huge global battle over standards. You've got powers like China, Europe, all trying to define the rules. We're going to look at how digital privacy might basically be ending the rise of these sovereign tech solutions trying to fight back. And interestingly, how Europe is trying to flip its own legal constraints into, competitive advantages in areas like medtech and even business management. That's our plan for this deep dive. Right, let's start with brain-computer interfaces. BCIs, the commercial side is definitely heating up. We just saw Meta introduce new data glasses, this was late September 2025, paired with something called a Neuroband BCI device. Now, these are not invasive, they just sit on your head, but the whole point is to collect raw brain data, then AI processes into something usable.
And that commercial push, that's exactly where the huge ethical questions jump out. We've seen people like the neurologist and UNESCO official, Professor Hervé Schneider, was taking a really critical stance. His concerns are, they're profound.
What's the core fear there? Is it just about collecting data or is it deeper?
It goes deeper. The fear, simply put, is that this kind of unrestricted worldwide collection of brain data, it could genuinely spell the end of human freedom as we know it. He stresses that, yes, collecting the data is the immediate ethical issue, but the existential risk that comes later. If future BCIs, boosted by advanced AI, can not only read our brain data but start writing information back into the brain, that changes everything. If you lose control over your own thoughts, your internal monologue, that's the ultimate stake, isn't it?
Wow, that is quite terrifying. Okay, hold that thought. Because on the other side, you've got people rushing towards this. There's this maximalist view. We heard from Olivier Oulier, he's the CEO of BR4InWorks.org, his idea. Collect brain data from absolutely everyone, not for therapy, but for general performance enhancement. His vision is, and this is his term, creating godlike superhumans.
Godlike superhumans. I mean, it sounds like something straight out of Silicon Valley marketing, doesn't it?
Yeah.
But that philosophy, that drive, it is attracting serious investment. It just throws into sharp relief how divided the field is. You have one camp trying desperately to protect mental rights, our inner world, and another pushing to maximize human potential, almost irrespective of the ethical fallout. The two seem completely irreconcilable.
Practically speaking, though, when we talk about collecting data, you mentioned invasive tech like Neuralink and non-invasive like Meta's band. Is the non-invasive approach inherently safer, less of a threat?
Safer in terms of immediate physical risk? Yes, probably. An invasive chip like Neuralink gets incredibly high-quality data, but from a very small number of people, at least for now, a non-invasive band. The data might be less precise, sure, but think about the scale. Meta's potential user base is enormous. So the volume of data, even if less precise per person, creates this huge societal, almost existential risk. It's not just about one individual's brain anymore. And that sheer scale is why the regulatory side is so crucial. We're actually expecting the UNESCO recommendation on the ethics of neurotechnology sometime this year, which should act as a kind of global ethical guidepost.
And Europe seems to be moving quite deliberately on this front, trying to safeguard these rights.
Oh, absolutely. You see, the European Charter for the Responsible Development of Neurotechnology is focusing very specifically on things like mental integrity, personal identity, freedom of thought. They're essentially doing what Schneeweiss called for. Regulating neurotech is regulating human rights. They're trying to get ahead of the curve, ensuring the brain doesn't just become another resource to be mined for data.
Okay, so that links perfectly into the next big theme, moving from protecting the individual mind to this wider geopolitical fight, the battle for national digital control, for sovereignty. Our sources are pretty clear. Even in Europe, this digital sovereignty thing is, more fragile than you might think. Let's start with the big problem, dependence on U.S. cloud infrastructure.
Yes, this is where theory hits reality hard. The Cloud Act risk. There was this really pivotal moment cited by Bernd Kors, the CEO of Aluka. It happened during testimony in the French Senate. A Microsoft executive was directly asked under oath if European data hosted in their US-governed clouds could be truly shielded from US authorities. The answer was blunt. Non, je ne peux pas le garantir. I cannot guarantee it. That one line really just shattered the illusion of data protection for critical European sectors using those platforms.
Wow. So if I'm running, say, sensitive European medical research data on a major US cloud provider, that testimony basically confirms my sovereignty claims are just smoke and mirrors.
That's the implication, yes. For those really critical areas, healthcare, public administration, defense, if your core platforms are legally subject to another country's laws, like the US Cloud Act, then genuine sovereignty becomes, well, an illusion. It's compromised from the start.
Okay. So that vulnerability sets the stage for the geopolitical contest. And China isn't just playing catch-up here. They seem to be actively trying to define what's being called the fourth wave of AI. They're setting standards for almost everything at an incredible speed.
It's a remarkably comprehensive strategy. It's not just about winning on one specific piece of tech. They're aiming to set the rules for the entire digital ecosystem. Take BCI standards, for example. The China Academy of Information and Communications Technology, CAICT, they're pushing hard on international BCI standardization. They've already released the first consumer-focused standard, TCAS 891-2024, for things like measuring attention using EEG. That's hardware standards right there.
And it's not just hardware, is it? There's a soft power angle, too, driven by language tech.
It's exactly right. Look at iFlyTech. They're China's big name in speech recognition. They now support over 130 languages. And crucially, their models are trained entirely on Chinese infrastructure. They've even established national standards for media localization, like translation and subtitling. What that does is position China as a sort of central hub, almost a gatekeeper for global information flow. And there's more, their AI is being deeply integrated into China's education system. This means they're exporting not just technology, but also their teaching philosophies, often explicitly linked with socialist core values. So they're trying to shape the technical rules, the cultural exchange rules, and even the underlying ideology all at once. It's ambitious.
Okay, so you have this dual challenge, the legal reach of US tech giants and the standard-setting dominance coming from China. How is Europe fighting back? The trend seems to be pushing for genuinely sovereign, transparent alternatives.
It really feels like the only viable path forward for them. We're seeing companies like G-Core stepping up. They're positioning themselves as an AI infrastructure leader, but with a key difference. They combine a global network reach with very clearly defined European compliant zones. So the model is sensitive training data. That stays firmly within the EU's legal jurisdiction, meaning GDPR, meaning the EU AI Act. But the actual computations, the AI inference, that can still run globally close to the users for low latency. It's trying to get the best of both worlds.
And it's not just about the cloud services, right? Europe is also trying to build its own complete, validated, open source AI stack, so they aren't reliant on anyone else's proprietary black box tech.
That's the Piovation, AMD, and Supermicro collaboration. They're building this thing called Piosphere. It's designed as a full-stack, validated, agent-based AI solution. And the key is scalability can run on a small Ministack unit in an office or scale up to a full cloud deployment. The whole selling point is for customers, particularly in Europe, who absolutely cannot risk their critical data falling under non-EU jurisdiction. It offers them a complete, sovereign system with clear compliance built in.
All right, we've looked at the big picture, this high-level battle for the sovereign stack, but how does all that actually, trickle down? If Europe is building this secure infrastructure, why are so many businesses, especially the German Mittelstand, those SMEs, why are they still hesitant? There seems to be this intense KI FOMO, fear of missing out on AI, but reports suggest only about a third are actually using it. What's the blockage?
That's a great question. And maybe we should clarify the Mittelstand first. These aren't just small shops. They're often highly specialized, world-leading companies in niche areas. They're the engine of innovation in many ways. For them, the path forward isn't necessarily these huge, disruptive digital transformation projects. It seems to be more about small, manageable, agentic steps.
KI agents. How should we think about those practically? Are they just like chatbots?
Not quite like a general-purpose chatbot, no. Think of a KI agent more like a highly specialized digital colleague. You hire it, so to speak, for one specific repetitive task, maybe processing purchase orders or managing complex documentation workflows or even onboarding new staff. Crucially, it doesn't just browse the whole internet. Its world might be limited just to your company's internal knowledge base or specific databases. These agents, usually based on large language models, can automate those really time-consuming routines. They work 24/7, they don't get tired, and they can be incredibly efficient.
But the trust issue is huge, right? Safety. If you let autonomous software loose in your business, how do you keep control? How do you maintain that sovereignty inside your own company walls?
Absolute key. And the experts we looked at emphasize 3 pretty simple but essential rules. These need to be hard-coded, really. First, strictly limit access rights. The agent should only see and interact with the data it absolutely needs for its specific task, the principle of least privilege. Second, document everything. Every action the agent takes must be logged in a clear audit trail. Transparency is crucial for trust and troubleshooting. And third, human oversight for big decisions. Anything with significant legal or financial consequences must require explicit human approval. No exceptions. This whole shift also demands a change in leadership, moving away from just relying on gut feel towards more data-driven decision-making, and critically understanding how to audit and manage these new digital colleagues.
Okay, that makes sense for internal adoption. Now let's look outward again. How is Europe trying to turn its perceived weaknesses, like strict regulations, into actual strengths? We touched on medtech earlier.
Yes, medtech is a fascinating example of what some are calling innovation through regulation. It sounds paradoxical, right?
Yeah.
But laws like Germany's Digital Health Acts, the GD&G and DIGIG, and the broader EU initiative for a European health data space, EHDS, they're actually creating clear, predictable pathways for health data. That legal certainty, that predictable environment, is making Europe a really attractive place for health tech companies to innovate and invest. They know the rules of the game.
And Hamburg seems to be a real hub for this in practice.
It really does. You've got initiatives like the Open Lab MedTech there. They're working on open source medical hardware, things like a mobile low-field MRI. And get this, their target cost is around $20,000. A low-field MRI for 20 grand. That's potentially revolutionary for global health equity. Imagine bringing that kind of imaging to remote or low-resource areas. They're focused on solving the daily pain points for clinicians. That's why you also see the University Hospital, UKE, embracing digital tools like AI-generated medical reports, K-ArtsBrief, and these ambient solutions like Cordy or Tandem Health AI scribes, basically that listen in during consultations and draft notes automatically within the electronic health record. They're gaining traction because they save doctors huge amounts of admin time. They address a real need.
So regulation fuels innovation, which solves practical problems. What's the third advantage Europe might be cultivating? You mentioned hardware, moving beyond electronics.
Right, photonic AI, computing with light. This is potentially the next massive leap in hardware. QANT, which is a subsidiary of the German industrial giant Trump, they're pioneering this. Instead of using electrons, like all current computers, they use photons, particles of light, for computation. The potential speed increase is enormous, but maybe the biggest immediate win is energy efficiency. Photonic computing uses vastly less power and generates almost no waste heat. Think about the environmental impact of current AI data centers. Google's planning one in Norway projected to use 860 megawatts. That's a huge energy footprint. Photonic AI offers a path to much more sustainable computing.
That sounds incredibly promising, but if it's that good, won't the US and China just pour money into catching up and dominating like they often do? How does Europe keep an edge, maintain sovereignty over a fundamental physics advantage like that?
That is the multi-billion euro question, isn't it? Leadership here requires sustained, focused investment. QANT recently raised a 62 million Series A round. Now that's a very healthy sum for European deep tech, a real vote of confidence in this light-based future. But, compared to the funding giants like Light Matter in the US or the resources behind AI labs globally, it's still relatively modest. The key will be not just the initial innovation, but ensuring the manufacturing capabilities, the supply chains, and the intellectual property stay protected within those sovereign legal frameworks we discussed. It needs that whole ecosystem approach. #outro.
We have covered a lot of ground in this deep dive. It's really quite dizzying when you step back. We went from the moral frontier of our own minds with BCI through the big geopolitical clashes for digital territory, right down to the practical uses of AI in medicine and everyday business. The scale of change is just immense.
It really is. And that core tension we kept coming back to, the shift from AI being just a tool we use to it becoming these autonomous, pervasive agents and interfaces that demands a fundamental rethink of how we manage things, how we regulate, how we lead. Leadership itself needs to adapt, becoming more about critical thinking, about auditing these systems, like using those audit trails we talked about, and embedding ethical guardrails right into the digital infrastructure.
So bringing it all together, what does this mean for the future, for this idea of sovereignty in the face of such powerful tech?
Okay, here's maybe a provocative thought to leave you with. Consider the threat of unchecked BCI. That deep, primal fear of losing our last private space, our own minds. It's acting as this incredibly powerful catalyst, forcing conversations globally. Could it be that these extreme existential risks posed by neurotechnology, could they paradoxically be the only thing strong enough to finally force governments, force tech giants to build the kind of human-centric, ethically sound, truly secure digital world that, frankly, we probably should have built years ago? It's the ultimate paradox, perhaps. The ultimate threat might just be the key to securing our ultimate freedoms, something for you to maybe ponder on your own.
That is definitely a powerful thought to end on. Thank you for joining us for this deep dive.
Superfly, magic brainchild, alchemist, pacifist. At times remember what punk rock is. Freedom's holiness. Maria Trace, Magistus Hermes. 33rd Avenue, 23rd floor venue. Harmony, superscore. Trained on trend or logic core. Post von Neumann architecture. Our planet's only cure to protect it from greedy mature.